Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Hi, welcome SBI Podcast listeners and video podcast viewers. My name is Drew Kieran, and with my co-host, Andrew Urteaga. We are both principals at SBI, a sales and marketing consultancy dedicated to helping you make your number. This is the weekly SBI podcast, and its purpose is to share insights and information relevant to your business. Today, we're going to review the timeless book, Good to Great by Jim Collins. And the question for the day is whether or not it's still relevant in today's market, right? But before I get going, I'll give you an interesting fact about my co-host and myself. We both share black belts in martial arts. My junior, 17 years of experience, where I have 27 years. So what that means to you, our viewers, is if we can't agree on the topic, we'll settle it in the cage.
I'm glad you got out of the hospital recently, so. So just to refresh our viewers on the book, if they haven't read it for a while, Jim Collins sampled 1,400 good companies. And what he examined was their performance over 40 years to find 11 companies that had become great. The main metric was 15 years of stock returns at or slightly above the market, punctuated by a transition point where they outpaced the market 3x over a 15-year period.
Yeah, and before I put you on the spot, let me give you my opinion. Fantastic book, but my 1-2 punch is, first, it's missing some critical elements that I think need to be in. Second is the sequencing is out of order when you look at strategic alignment. But in order for this to make sense for our viewers, what we'll need to do is look at the SBI revenue growth methodology, specifically pages 27 through 34. So if you'd like a copy of this, you could download it at www.salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report.
Yeah, I completely agree. Love the book, and what you'll see as we go through the 6-step revenue growth methodology, you'll see a lot of those concepts reinforced in the book. So just to level set with our audience, SBI has conducted this research over the last 9 years. And one of the things that we found over the last 12 months is the concept of strategic alignment. And we'll describe what that is later on in the show. What we saw is that emerging best practices are the way to leapfrog the competition through strategic alignment. So why don't we walk the audience through the 6 steps and what each one of them means. The first one is market research, which is having a deep understanding of the market, the accounts, the buyers, and the users that you want to pursue. And this ensures that the strategy is differentiated from the competition through the eyes of the marketplace. Then comes your corporate strategy. And as a CEO, what you're doing here is you're allocating people, time, and money towards the pursuit of profitable growth. Once that's defined, it makes sense then to design and launch your products, right, from a product strategy standpoint into the marketplace that solves the market problems that you're trying to address. Then your marketing strategy can be built, which is driving demand for those products and services.
Okay.
And then comes the sales strategy, which is converting that demand. This is the execution piece, converting the demand into revenue. And then finally is the alignment of the people piece, the 50% of the equation, which is talent, right? What are the people that we need across each of the functions that are going to be able to execute our strategies?
No, it makes complete sense. Thanks for walking us through the 6-step revenue growth methodology. But why don't we take a short break here to let our viewers know about some offerings from SBI, and after the break, we'll look at how this 6-step process applies to the book Good to Great.
Do you have too many things to do and not enough time to do them? Is finding time to learn best practices almost impossible? The SBI Podcast is your solution. Turn time spent exercising, commuting, and traveling into productive learning time with a subscription to the SBI Podcast. SBI Podcast listeners get unique insight into real-world sales and marketing issues through interviews with your industry peers every week. Find us on iTunes by searching for Sales Benchmark Index Podcast and subscribe today.
Welcome back. My name is Drew Kieran. I'm with my co-host Andrew Urteaga. Today we're discussing the Jim Collins book Good to Great and whether or not it has relevance 14 years later. Before the break, I took my 1-2 punch at what I believe is missing from the book. Andrew, I'd like your thoughts.
Yeah, let's go one step at a time through some of Collins' concepts. There was one overarching theme that really links to me virtually all of Collins's argument, and it's this idea of defining a narrowly focused objective and focus all your company's resources towards an area of strength. So if we kind of go back to our corporate strategy definition, which is the allocation of people, time, and money, sounds very familiar here, right?
Right.
Almost aligns completely.
Yeah, and it was interesting, too, when you look at the book, and he had the hedgehog theory. And what that was specifically is not trying to do a lot of things well, but try to pick just one thing and do that better than anybody else. So when you look at that, you can say, well, okay, corporate strategy, I get it, strategic alignment, I think it puts it in context as well, too.
Yeah, so this is the difference between tactics and strategies, right, Drew? So why don't we, at this point, why don't we put up the strategy versus tactics graph,
okay,
and we'll walk the audience through the difference, because I think there might be confusion out there in the marketplace,
okay,
what these are. So why don't we define the difference between strategy and tactics for our audience? So
okay,
strategy is doing the right things, and tactics is doing things right. And if we think about this on our 2x2 matrix, we have strategy across the top on the horizontal axis, and then on the vertical axis, we have tactics. If we go back to strategy in our two columns, in the left column, we'll have an ineffective strategy, and on the right column, we'll have what is called an effective strategy. On the tactics, we'll start on the bottom row, which is an inefficient way of executing tactics and an efficient way of executing tactics. Okay. So let's go quadrant by quadrant and walk our audience, and as you follow along, you might think about where you want to plot yourself. In the upper left-hand corner, we have what is called dying fast. That is a poor plan executed brilliantly. If we go counterclockwise on the bottom left-hand corner, this is dying slowly. This is a poor plan executed poorly.
Okay.
Then in the bottom right-hand corner, we have what is survival, which is a brilliant plan executed poorly.
That makes sense.
And then where you want to be, right, this is where emerging best practices and your ability to leapfrog the competition, which is thriving. This is a brilliant plan executed efficiently.
Yep. No, it makes complete sense, too. So let's keep going and relate it back to the book. So if you take a look at market research, for example, too, Collins defines it as an inability to keep pace with these changes that often results in a company's failure. And what he was referring to were changes in the marketplace, too. So I'd say he's completely aligned there, right? The second one was the talent strategy, and he has a great line. We talked about getting the right people in the right seats, too. So I think, once again, when you look at talent strategy, he's aligned there as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all on those points. But the one thing that was missing from the discussion, and if you kind of go back to our 6-step revenue growth methodology, there was 3 components that he missed. He didn't talk about product strategy, he didn't talk about the marketing strategy, and he didn't talk about the sales strategy.
Okay, so you're finally coming around now. We don't have to go to blows.
Well, that still might happen, but before we get there, why don't we take another short break for our viewers and our listeners, and they can hear a little bit more about some of SBI's new offerings. When we come back, we'll review the missing links of the 6-step growth revenue methodology.
Okay.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI Magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI Magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Hi, welcome back, everybody. My name is Drew Curran. I'm with my co-host, Andrew Urteaga. So today we're discussing the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, and whether or not it's relevant 14 years later. So before the break, I took some jabs at the champion and each other.
Yeah.
And we identified the functional areas that must be operationalized in alignment with the corporate strategy. And they are the product, marketing, and sales strategy.
So for our audience and our listeners, Drew, why does it matter? Why do I care?
Well, because none of these functions will be successful without the other ones, right? And dependency from the other ones, too. So if you think about it and you look at product as a whole, too, right? It doesn't matter how great the products are. If you're not driving demand from marketing and nobody's selling those products, you're not going to be successful. Same thing. Products can't sell themselves. So the best products in the world need marketing to drive that demand, right? And then when you look at the sales, too, sales can't sell without great products and then leads from marketing.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like the critical links of the revenue growth value chain were missing. The analogy that I always think about is the rowing team, right, in the Olympics, right? If there's one guy that's rowing faster than everybody else, they're out of alignment.
Right.
They're missing, right?
Yeah.
So that could be the strongest rower, but if you got the other people on the boat are the weakest link, we're never going to get there. I think the other thing that was missing that we haven't really driven home or talked about is the sequencing of each of these strategies is just as important. So you first need to do the market research. You wouldn't go out, build a sales strategy and a marketing strategy without understanding the marketplace.
Right.
Who are the markets? What are the markets? What are the verticals? What are the segments that we want to focus on? Who are the accounts that most value our services? Who are the buyers in those accounts and how do they make a purchase decision? And then the user, the people actually touching the products and using them every day or experiencing the service. What do they value the most? And only then can we truly build total alignment. And then once that's defined, those are the inputs for the corporate strategy, which really answer the question, why do we exist? Which markets are we going to play in? And I think just as importantly, what are we not going to focus on? Because corporate strategy is really, and strategy itself is about making critical decisions on what you're going to do and what you're not going to do.
Yeah, and then if you look at the three that we're actually missing as a whole, so product, building products that actually serve a demand from the market research. If you look at marketing as a whole, driving those opportunities and creating demand for those products. And then when you look at sales as well, converting that into revenue, right? Those are the things that we're missing that I saw particularly that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I completely agree once again. He did a great job about tackling talent.
Yeah.
Right? He spent a lot of time on there. And one of the quotes that I really liked that Colin included in the book was, you have to get the right people in the bus in the right seats.
Absolutely agree.
Right? And I think we mentioned it earlier in the show. Success is 50% talent and 50% performance conditions.
Correct.
You can't just have the strategy. You can't have just a great plan without putting the right people in the right places.
Yeah, and how many times have you seen it when you've seen, perfect conditions, but you put the wrong talent in there and C players in it too, and it just doesn't work? Or you have A players and you put them in a situation where, it's a C-level performance conditions too, and you see the exact same results there as well too. It doesn't work.
I agree. I can't believe we're actually agreeing for once. So we're going to take one more break. And when we come back, we're going to discuss next what you do with this and how do you actually, if you're an organization, a listener, and a viewer, how you can actually go about gaining strategic alignment. So if you like listening to this podcast and you want to access more peer-driven best practices, here's how you can subscribe to the SBI blog.
Cool.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings. How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Welcome back, everybody. Andrew, before we put a roundhouse to Collins, why don't we let the audience know what they should do from here?
Sure. What you should do is download the 2016 SBI Research Report and review pages 27 through 34. And don't do that in isolation. You should do that with the rest of the functional leaders. You're going to see there that this highlights the 6-step revenue growth methodology that we've reviewed with our audience today. Okay, Drew, so for the big question and the way we always end our show, is this a pretender or a contender?
You know what? I have to say absolutely it's a contender. I agree. There's no knock out of the champ. I think that we highlighted some certain areas where Collins missed some things or things should be augmented into the book too. And the big thing to me was also the sequencing seemed out of place too. But overall, it's a fantastic book. And you didn't mention it earlier, but I'd say, one other thing our audience should do, if somebody by chance has never read this book, which I don't know how many people are out there that haven't read it, right, I'd pick it up and read it because it is a great read. And he has a lot of very good points.
Yeah, I agree.
So what does it all mean? It means for our audience that you can't make your number if you don't have strategic alignment across the entire organization. This is why you care. So if you want to make sure that you get this right, get a copy of this year's research report called How to Make Your Number in 2016. You can find that at www.salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report. If you feel like you might not be in strategic alignment, you can have one of our experts come lead you through a workshop, which will detail how to do this. Go to www.salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-workshop and request a workshop. So Andrew, thanks for going the rounds with me today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as our audience did.
I did. I'm glad you didn't have to go home crying today. So
save that for next time.
I also want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in. This show has become very popular, and it's you, our audience, that makes it all possible. So until next time, we wish you much success as you try to make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.